Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you. The Morning Majority, 6:30.
WMAL.
All right, 7:07. We are back on WMAL. We've got Brian Wilson here, and we've got another guest in the studio who's prettier than Brian Neiman, which is nice.
Yeah, well, almost anybody would fit that category, except for me, perhaps. But yes, we are honored to have Ann Coulter in the chair today since Brian Neiman's off. Thanks for getting up early this morning, Ann.
Yeah, this is a special occasion. You're two of the maybe 10 people who will ever see me awake at this hour.
Good to know. Well, tell us a little bit about what's going on in your book tour. You said you're having to get up a little early occasionally these days on the book tour because it's so spectacularly successful. Tell us about Demonic and how it's going.
It's going great, other than the complete lack of sleep, because I'm still not getting to sleep at night until 3 or 4. It's interesting. I haven't, usually when I put out a book, which is a little frustrating, you spend all this time researching, writing a book, and liberals will fixate on some tiny little joke in the book, and that's all I get asked about for the next 2 months, and it gets so tedious and irritating. On the other hand, it does pique readers' interest, though this book is selling well, and they're not doing that to me this time, so maybe it doesn't have to happen to sell books.
Well, that's good news. And tell me the premise of the book.
Thank you for asking. Well, I noticed one of your stories here, this glitter bomb in San Francisco on Palenti. This is it's this sort of thing that first gave me the idea. I mean, I spend a lot of time around liberals, and thus noticed that they kind of behave like a mob, college campuses, and so on and so forth. I mean, this sort of thing never, ever, ever happens to a Democrat, unless it's by a liberal.
Right.
This sort of thing is only committed by liberals. And so I started looking at groupthink and herd behavior, even financial panic books. And the one that has, since my book has come up, shot up on Amazon, which is great, is the father of groupthink, Gustave Le Bon, wrote in 1896, The Crowd, A Study of the Popular Mind. He was the first one to look at how a person's behavior changes in a crowd. And you go through the characteristics of a man in a crowd, and not only does it completely explain liberal behavior, but it explains things about liberals I could never understand before, like how so many of them, whom I know are smart, they went to good colleges, they must do well on their SATs, and yet they seem so stupid. Well, that's what happens when a man is in a crowd. His IQ gets lowered.
We sort of saw that in Vancouver just the other day.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, by the way, we're taking your calls for Ann Coulter. You know the number, 1-888-630-WMAL. That's 630-9625. You got a question for Ann Coulter about a new book, or you want to weigh in on the topic? I want to ask you about your thoughts about this deadline in Libya.
Oh, yeah, I heard you on the way over here.
The deadline is today.
Yes.
It comes just before the big golf summit.
Wait, no, who is issuing the deadline to whom?
Speaker Boehner has said that the 90 days are up.
The War Powers Resolution, 90 days.
Right.
And Obama says we are in compliance with the
Because he says it's not a war.
And Boehner says, oh, no, you're not.
Well,
and therein lies the conflict.
I think... I actually don't think the president needs congressional approval to deploy troops because he's the commander-in-chief. So constitutionally, what Congress is supposed to do is withdraw funding, impeach him. But mostly they hold the purse. That's how they, and by the way, I think they should.
But do you think they have the guts to do it?
Well, they ought to. What is the point? I mean, Democrats have been haranguing us for 8 years on a war that actually was in the United States national security interest, saying, Saddam didn't hit us on 9/11. Saddam didn't hit us on 9/11. Saddam didn't. Well, okay, neither did Libya or Egypt.
Right.
And the other big argument they had was it's illegitimate under international law. You cannot intervene in Iraq because this is only for purposes of regime change. I think that's what we're doing in Libya
by the way,
and Egypt.
Kucinich chiming in today to remind us that Bush actually did go to Congress.
Right. I mean, that was a good idea. The only purpose of getting a declaration of war for Congress is for international law. Other countries have to react that way. But the president is the commander-in-chief. And I mean, I was just asking a law professor a few months ago about this, based on our intervention in Egypt and Libya. I don't see any U.S. national security interests there, which, of course, is why the Democrats support it. And I asked him, well, what if, the president is commander-in-chief, doesn't that constitutionally limit him in some way? What if he sends the troops to the Bahamas to build a Ferris wheel? And there are things Congress can do. I just don't think it's the War Powers Act.
Yeah. All right, let's take a call. David in Alexandria says he's a big fan of yours. And what's on your mind, David?
Well, first off, I think that, Ann, you're very interesting and very smart and very pretty. But I want to ask you a question about the groupthink premise, and that you mentioned about Democrats and liberals. But I want to know if there's crossover, because I've often thought that the GOP, particularly listening to Rush and others, they parrot the same information, kind of like zombies, and I call them robots. And I'm wondering if there's a crossover, not just with the liberals, but also with the conservatives as well.
I think it's mostly a different thing. There is, and in fact, I was just mentioning this week. You see something similar to that but talk radio, you only have so much time. You are going to be a little bit more black and white. I think that is I guess I don't listen to that much talk radio, sorry, but it's very early in the morning, you guys.
That's right. But we forgive you.
My experience is much more from watching TV, and so I'll speak to that. You do not see among conservative commentators the repetition of the slogan of the week the way you do with Democrats. Going back to Clinton's impeachment, where it's like when we change time with daylight savings time, all at once they all start saying it's a rush to judgment, a rush to judgment.
You find the same phrases popping up all across the spectrum. That's right.
Yeah, and I think that really is distinct to liberals. You got a little bit of it with conservatives, but not too much. It tends to be with the not very bright congressmen who are afraid of saying something stupid, and so they say what they've been told. But certainly, Mary Catherine Ham, I'm sure you have gotten talking points faxed to you, and to the extent you have even looked at them, it was just to read them aloud and laugh about them.
Yes, it does not help me in my work.
Right. Conservatives just can't do it. We're too individualist.
Let's check in with Mike in D.C. who wanted to comment on what you said about Libya. What's up, Mike?
Hey, guys. Yeah, this is actually success. We actually have NATO involved in this war. They have taken the lead. Rapid regime change does not mean rapid conflict resolution. We basically removed Saddam and we moved to Taliban rapidly, but we certainly have not ended the conflict here. Here we're letting it up to the Libyans with some NATO support, and we have no troops on the ground either. So you really can't withdraw troops as implied in the War Powers Resolution.
All right, Mike, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And very quickly.
I do not consider success NATO's involved. I consider success, how does this help the United States of America?
All right, well, we're going to continue to take your calls. You know the number, 1-888-630-9625. Right now, though, traffic and weather together every 10 minutes on the 5s. Along with Jamie Whitten, here's Lisa Baden with the